Hey folks, I'm Kev and welcome back to the Lorcana Lexicon. In set 3 spoilers, I talked about how the centerpiece card for this deck is going to change the game, and that card is Morph Space Goo. When Morph's in play, it puts your opponent in a really difficult position because they just don't know what it's going to turn into, and with the menagerie of things that it can become and totally change the landscape of the board, Morph's a real threat. The card that made me want to revisit this strategy was Jasmine Royal Commodore. This card reminds me a lot of the Milo Thatch from set 3, giving you the ability to bounce all of your opponent's permanents, but just without any of the work. And the deck we'll be looking at today really puts a squeeze on your opponent because if they want to play sensibly around Jasmine, we're going to put pressure on them with every other card in our deck to eventually force them to play into it. And before we go any further, we've got the results of last week's giveaway. Thank you so much to everyone who liked and commented and supported the video and the channel. It honestly means a lot to me. And the winner of these playmats is Beer Quest. So congratulations Beer Quest. I've commented on your original comment, or leave a comment here, just get in touch with me and we'll get those sent out to you. Again, thank you very much to West End Games for providing all the prizes we've had on the giveaways on the channel. They're a local game store here in Glasgow, so if you're in the UK, check them out for your card game, board game needs. Their website's in the description below. Anyway, back to the deck. So the centerpiece of this deck is around Morph and how he interacts with the card Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Now Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo got a lot of hype when it was originally released, but it hasn't really lived up to its power level. It's got a really cool interaction with shift cards where you get to return both halves of the shift to your hand. Both the top and the bottom card will return to your hand, and what that means is you can replay either side of it or replay something else. We'll see why that's important when we start breaking down the choices in this deck and the synergies it has with those. This deck attempts to attack on two angles, straining your opponent's resources and forcing them into making bad plays. One half of the deck is our Morph Shift package, and the other half is a Prince John discard package. If you've been in the game for long enough, you'll have seen the Prince John discard package. What you're aiming to do with this package is get a Prince John in play and bleed your opponent's hand while you keep drawing cards. This is the best draw engine in Emerald, where you continue to tax your opponent's hand while keeping yours nice and flush, using Sudden Chill, Ursula Deceiver, Hypnotise, and the back-breaking We Don't Talk About Bruno, all draw additional cards while making your opponent discard. It's a really powerful, tried and tested strategy that's used in a lot of Emerald decks, and we're going to slot this package right in here. Like I said, if you've been in the game for a while, you've probably already seen this package, so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about these cards. The more exciting part of the deck is all of the shift cards that we have to accompany Morph and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. The first and freshest one that we want to talk about is Jasmine Royal Commodore. Also accompanying her is Jasmine Royal Seafarer. Now Jasmine Royal Seafarer is a reasonable card on her own, allowing you to exert characters your opponents may be trying to protect, or to give cards Reckless to force them to exert on your opponent's turn or to make bad attack. We've seen this effect be very, very strong out of Lyle Tiberius and the set 1 John Silver, and I don't expect it's going to be any different here, especially on an inkable 3-drop with a good shift chain. What you're aiming to do with Jasmine Royal Commodore is force your opponent to get into a spot where they have to exert to keep up with the pressure you've been applying either with your threats or with your Prince John, and then punish them by returning all of those cards to their hand and then maybe making them discard them. The nice thing about shifting is you can sing immediately, so the turn that we shift Jasmine onto Morph or the other Jasmine, we'll have the option to sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, Be King Undisputed, or We Don't Talk About Bruno, returning all of our opponent's exerted creatures to their hand, and then having Jasmine sing Be King Undisputed to clear out the one unexerted character that they might have, will just be backbreaking for their position. And We Don't Talk About Bruno works in a very similar way, where you just bounce everything and then return the one thing that's unexerted. Again, taking over the board completely. Having Jasmine sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo on the other hand opens up a chain of possibilities for us, where we get to return all of their exerted characters to their hand and then get our Jasmine back to do it again later in the game, while also setting up another play. This will most likely involve Bibbidi Bobbidi Booing Jasmine to put a Maui into play to smash your opponent's locations, or the other shift target that we're going to talk about, Lady Tremaine, to do a similar job to King Undisputed. Lady Tremaine and Morph have always been a dangerous duo together, and here that just goes tenfold. Having Morph shift into Lady Tremaine opens up all the same options that Jasmine had, but being a one-card engine herself, where you can play Lady Tremaine, force them to banish one of their characters, and then have Lady Tremaine instantly sing We Don't Talk About Bruno to get rid of another character, have Lady Tremaine sing Be King Undisputed to make them banish another character, or Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo to return your Morph to your hand, and then have Lady Tremaine come back into play and force them to banish another character. And in case it wasn't obvious, using Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo in this way, returning both halves of the shift card to your hand, will allow you to replay your Jasmine for its value, or replay your Morph to then shift something else onto it later, or even just flesh out your ink pool if that's what you need to do. Every time you hear me talk about a deck, you'll hear me talking about making sure the cards continue to flow. We've looked at the Prince John package and how that keeps cards in our hand, but additionally we have 2 shift lines which are going to keep cards flowing as well. The first card probably requires no introduction at this point, and that's Diablo Devoted Herald and the Diablo Maleficent Spy that normally accompanies this card. These cards are just so good and have continued to be great ever since their printing. When you pack them alongside the Prince John discard package, it makes sure you've got enough actions in play to always shift onto your Diablo, but bringing Morph into the mix just means that we're always going to get our 3-cost Diablo down in reasonable time to impact the board and keep cards in our hand, punishing our opponent for trying to progress their own game plan, forcing them to have interaction. The other less treading path for card advantage in this shift deck is the Queen of Hearts Sensing Weakness, and we're playing 2 of the 2-cost Queen of Hearts just to give it a few more shift targets. This card has always felt phenomenal when it accompanies Morph. If you can shift the Queen on turn 3, you get to instantly replace that card and normally take out a threat that they were not expecting to be removed. 4 damage is a lot with Rush on turn 3. And the Queen's ability isn't limited to just itself, so where other characters are challenging, we are just replacing those cards. And the small Queen of Hearts has been raising in popularity recently just as a clean answer to a lot of the little aggressive threats in the format. The cards that we're rounding out this deck with are just generically good Emerald and Ruby cards. The first one I've already spoke about, which is Maui. Maui's always just been a great threat as he can clear out locations, requires multiple characters to deal with them normally, does all these things while being inkable, and especially in a Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo shell, he can just double up on the chaos after you've already crippled your opponent with the strong effects of Jasmine, Queen of Hearts, or Lady Tremaine. The other card is a new addition from Azurite Sea, and that is Gogo Tamago. Gogo Tamago will not be in a shift target. Gogo Tamago is a great threat, just coming down early, threatening our opponent's Diablos, pecking away at our opponent's locations, or just getting us a few lore for virtually no input. When we draw it in the late game, however, we can pay an additional 2 ink to gain lore equal to the damage on a chosen character. While this may not come up a lot, it's just another thing for our opponent to think about and potentially make mistakes on, while they're already trying to play around all of our other tricky traps that we can set up with Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo and this suite of threats. And rounding out the deck, we have 2 copies of Hidden Cove. This card's inclusion isn't groundbreaking as we've seen the rise of this card, but with the amount of challenging that we want to do with our cards, it just makes our threats a lot more versatile. Turning Gogo Tamago into a 3-3 to be able to not just trade but eat our opponent's Diablos, turning our Diablos into 3-3s so that they survive Fire the Cannons or other Diablos, and turning our Queen of Hearts Impulsive Ruler into a 3-3 rush threat will just swing some games. The plus 1 attack and plus 1 power really does go a long way in Lorcana, and it just swings a lot of combats the way you wouldn't expect them to. So for a very low investment cost and a very low cost to move our characters here, 2 copies of Hidden Cove in any character focused green deck is almost a must at this point in my opinion. So here's the full deck, our Emerald Ruby Bibbidi Bobbidi Goo deck. The reason I like this deck so much is because it can play on multiple axes, making it very difficult for our opponent to keep hands that will be good against every plan we have against them. Our 2-drops are all versatile and do very different things, with Ursula attacking their hand, Queen of Hearts attacking their characters, Gogo Tamago putting on evasive pressure, and Morph threatening to become something horrific that can swing the game. Following any of those cards up with any of our 3-cost characters, whether that's Prince John, Diablo or Jasmine, puts our opponent in a bind that they may not have anticipated. Playing Prince John while our 2-cost character sings Sudden Chill will just suddenly put us up 2 cards. Jasmine can suddenly force one of their characters to make a bad attack by becoming reckless, and Diablo just puts screws in your opponent to answer it as soon as possible. The turns that follow this will involve us either double spelling, moving our characters into the cove to make them even beefier, or starting our shift chains and then singing with the newly shifted threat. Between Jasmine, Maui, Lady Tremaine, Bee King Undisputed, and we don't talk about Bruno, it's going to be very difficult for our opponent to keep something relevant in play, and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo just doubles up any of those effects or allows us to reset cards like Ursula or Gogo Tamago if we're looking for interesting ways to attack their hand or close the game. With the combined efforts of Prince John, Diablo and the Queen of Hearts, we should always have a full hand, allowing us to flex in many different directions as the game goes on. I am such a fan of strategies like this, where your opponent has to make awkward mulligan decisions against cards that you might not even have. Your deck can attack on multiple axes, making it good into a variety of strategies, or allowing you to flex into different strategies as the game rolls on. This is true mid-range Lorcana, with good removal options, good aggressive options, multiple evasive threats and hand attack. And not to mention the suite of different card draw effects you've got as well, while taxing your opponent on the board and in their hand. I honestly think this deck has what it takes to take down competitive events. It's built on a foundation with real pedigree. The Prince John package, accompanied by Diablo, have proven to be tournament winning combinations, and now we're bringing in this alternate plan of attack that really makes it difficult for our opponent to stay on board, which is conventionally how they beat Emerald decks. This deck was very difficult to build because once you start looking at Morph, you have to start looking at every shift card in the colour, and they just can't all fit in this deck. I wanted to play Bell Archer, I wanted to play the set 1 Shift Aladdin, I wanted to play Mulan, I even looked at putting in a Sisu chain, although I don't think that's as good without Ice Block. We couldn't even fit Brawl into this deck, that's how tight this list is. So undoubtedly there's going to be loads and loads of ways to build this shell, so I actively encourage you to go out there and mix about with it. Would you rather play Clarabelles to refill your hands instead of Diablo? Would you rather be more aggressive leaning and get in a Flynn Rider package or a Cheshire Cat package? Green Red Shift looks powerful and unexplored. It's going to catch a lot of people out who are used to playing against meta decks, and it's doing something that's definitely powerful enough to win you that next trophy. If you think this deck looks sick, make sure you leave a like below. If you've got other ideas or think I've missed anything, tell me down in the comments. I'm going to be away next week, so there's going to be no video next week. I'll be in the Channel Islands though, so if anyone knows of a sweet card gaming scene in Guernsey, let me know, I might check it out. Other than that, I wish you the best of luck at League and all the other tournaments you're going to in future, and keep thinking happy thoughts, folks, and I'll see you for the next one.